¿Cómo estás? Scott Orland, CINEMA-Magazin. I'm here at the 75th Annual Venice Film Festival. The opening night film, as you can see, well, that's the Italian version. First Man with Ryan Gosling, Claire Foy. It is the next film from Academy Award winner Damien Chazelle. We're going to go inside and we're going to try and get you some video images of Ryan and Damien at the press conference. Now, I'm not supposed to be videoing in there, so it might be very clandestine. So if you see my arm shaking, just remember, I'm doing it just for you. Let's go inside. Most young boys primarily want to grow up and be an astronaut, and there's something cool about that thought. Most people will never get the opportunity to get into space, but you guys got to cinematically pretend to do it. Can you talk about what that obstacle, what the challenges were like, and how surreal did it get at any particular point in time for you?
I'll say the biggest thing on the day for me was
claustrophobia. Damien and the crew really created capsules that were too authentic. I mean, I understand why I had a meltdown. I think all the guys, particularly when we were doing the Apollo 1 burn-up, we all had a seriously hard time sitting in that capsule locked in the spacesuits with 3 levels of door closing. Claustrophobia was a big one for me, and that was pretty surreal, as well as you got a whole crew waiting for you to shoot it.
And Ryan and Damien, what was the experience like for you? What type of insights did you get?
What type of
insight of the astronaut's life and on their experience by vicariously living it.
One of the first things I thought I should learn how to do was fly when I was preparing for the role, and it was very important to Neil. Neil was flying before he could drive. It seemed like an inherent part of him, and it wasn't too long into my instruction where the instructor asked me to take the plane into a controlled stall, which is the equivalent of when a car stalls, except you're doing it intentionally for some reason. And I thought in that moment, this is a terrible idea, and there's a reason why Neil Armstrong was destined to be one of the greatest pilots and why I'm not. But I realized something in that moment, that there is something very different about him, and I think about a lot of astronauts. Neil started as a test pilot before he was in the Air Force, and it's a certain kind of person that will knowingly get into a plane that hasn't been flown and intentionally push it to its breaking point for the sole purpose of pushing our knowledge of aeronautics forward. It's a certain breed of person, and I think it was important for me to realize that it's very different from me, and I had to recognize that difference in order to be able to play it.
And Damien?
I have a follow-up question on the claustrophobia comment for Damien. Damien, it pertains to the design of the film. I mean, when we see films about space travel, it's this beautiful, romantic, expand and everybody's comfortable. And you have decided to keep the film so tight and almost to an uncomfortable level. We experienced that. Can you talk a little bit about that design?
Yeah, I mean, I think that came really from, or that decision really came mostly from seeing some of these spacecrafts myself. Either remembering seeing them as a kid, going to a museum like the Smithsonian or something, or seeing some of them later on, just how tiny they are. The first time I ever saw, I think, a Gemini spacecraft, I assumed I was just looking at part of the spacecraft, not the actual entire module where the astronauts worked and lived. So there's something to that I kind of realized early on I hadn't felt from reading about the space program or watching previous movies about it, that could be a new facet to show, and trying to be really faithful to what that experience would feel like, how much it limits your point of view, how much you can see but not see, how much you're relying on other senses to guide you. Space is obviously mostly this kind of black void, and you're traveling, searching for objects or searching for landing areas in this expanse that's mostly completely nebulous. And then on top of that, you're in these kind of flying tin cans. So everything about it felt sort of both terrifying to me and also made me all the more amazed that it ever halfway worked out. So I wanted to kind of capture that feeling more than anything.